The night was colder than Lyra remembered. Her small body shivered as she ran through the dark forest, her bare feet sinking slightly into the damp soil. Her heart pounded so fast she feared it might burst. Behind her, heavy, uneven footsteps echoed in the shadows. The monsters were getting closer. She could hear their guttural growls and the scraping of claws against broken branches. They were relentless, and they had followed her from her world. Through the wormhole, she had barely managed to escape. Lyra stumbled over a root, nearly falling flat on her face. Pain shot through her knee, and tears of frustration pricked her glowing eyes. She wanted to cry, to scream, to run faster, but she had to keep moving. She didn't know where she was or if she could survive until dawn. The forest seemed endless, dark and merciless. Yet she kept going, hoping somehow she would find shelter. Through the twisted trees, she saw a faint light in the distance. It was warm, not like the cold blue glow of her homeworld's energy sources. Her legs, though aching, carried her faster toward it. She didn't know if it was safe, but it was better than staying in the forest where the monsters hunted. Her pod had crash-landed hours ago, and she had run blindly ever since. The forest smelled different here, earthy and fresh, unlike the burnt metal scent she had grown used to on her planet. As she drew closer, she noticed the shape of a small house. Smoke curled lazily from a chimney, and the soft golden light glowed from the windows. She paused, crouching behind a bush to catch her breath. "Are they still following me?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. She strained her ears, listening. The growls had grown fainter, and she felt a small sense of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could hide there. She stepped out from the bush cautiously, clutching a piece of cloth around her shoulders for warmth. Her skin was pale and slightly translucent, but the faint glow of her markings was still visible in the darkness. She felt vulnerable, exposed. The house looked ordinary, human in design, simple and small. A porch with wooden steps, a little garden that seemed untended, and a warm glow from inside. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if humans would help her or be afraid. Her planet had taught her that humans could be unpredictable. Meanwhile, inside the house, a small pug named Milo had already heard something unusual. His ears twitched as he sniffed the air, sensing an unfamiliar scent. Milo was no ordinary dog. He was perceptive, loyal, and unusually brave for his size. With a soft grunt, he wriggled free from the blanket on the couch and trotted toward the door. The door creaked as he nudged it open slightly, his little nose leading him. Outside, he saw a small figure huddled near the porch steps, trembling. Milo sniffed carefully, his tail wagging slowly but cautiously. The creature looked nothing like a human child. Its skin shimmered faintly in the moonlight, and its eyes glowed a soft blue. The pug tilted his head, unsure whether it was friend or foe. Lyra froze as she saw the tiny dog approach. She had never seen anything like it, yet she sensed no threat from the small animal. Hesitant, she crouched lower, unsure if she should move or run again. Milo sniffed her carefully, stepping closer, then sat down beside her. Lyra, feeling cold and exhausted, gently reached out her hand. The pug nudged it with his nose, then licked her fingers. Lyra smiled faintly, a small glimmer of relief in her eyes. She hadn't felt safe for a long time. Slowly, she sat down on the porch, pulling Milo closer. The warmth of the small dog was comforting, and she curled up next to him, letting herself rest for a moment. Time passed slowly as she slept lightly, listening to the distant rustling of the forest. Her dreams were fragmented, images of the monsters chasing her, her pod exploding, and strange worlds colliding. She awoke at times, only to calm herself by feeling Milo's steady presence beside her. The dog seemed to understand her fear in a way that no human could. For a few moments, in that quiet night, she felt she wasn't alone. Hours passed, and the first hints of dawn painted the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. The shadows in the forest shifted, and Lyra stirred from her light sleep. She blinked slowly, realizing she had survived the night so far. Milo yawned and stretched beside her, his tail wagging slightly as if to reassure her. She whispered softly, "Thank you, little one." Her voice was hoarse, but the words carried a warmth she hadn't felt in weeks. Suddenly, she sensed something different. The growls in the distance had returned, but they were closer now, louder and more threatening. Panic surged through her chest. "They're here," she murmured, gripping Milo tightly. The pug barked, small but determined, and stood protectively between her and the forest. Lyra's mind raced. She didn't know how she could defend herself. She was tiny, weak, and unfamiliar with this world. The monsters were still out there, hungry and relentless. The front door of the house opened quietly, and a man stepped out. His hair was tousled from sleep, and his eyes widened as he saw Lyra curled up with Milo. He froze for a moment, unsure what he was seeing. The girl's skin shimmered faintly in the dawn light, her glowing markings contrasting with the ordinary world around her. Yet she seemed fragile, vulnerable, and in need of help. "Hey," the man said cautiously, keeping his voice soft. "It's okay. You're safe here." Lyra flinched, unsure if she could trust him, but the sincerity in his eyes and the gentle tone of his voice calmed her slightly. She stayed huddled with Milo, looking up at him cautiously. The man knelt down slowly, keeping a safe distance. "I'm Evan," he said. "And this little guy is Milo. You don't have to be afraid." Milo barked once, then wagged his tail, signaling that he approved of Evan. Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Maybe humans weren't as frightening as she had feared. She tried to speak, her alien words strange and melodic, but Evan couldn't understand them. Yet he smiled kindly, offering her a blanket. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then accepted the blanket, wrapping it around her shoulders. She was too exhausted to argue, too scared to resist. The warmth was soothing, and Milo pressed closer to her, resting his head on her lap. For the first time since escaping her homeworld, she felt a sense of safety. But the forest was still alive with danger. The monsters had not stopped. Their shadows loomed closer as they hunted relentlessly, their eyes glinting with predatory intelligence. Evan could see the fear in Lyra's eyes, and he realized that this was no ordinary stranger. He needed to act quickly if he wanted to protect her. He gently gestured for Lyra to come inside. "You can rest inside," he said softly. "I'll keep you safe." She hesitated, then followed cautiously, clutching Milo tightly. The warmth of the house enveloped her, and the scent of human life, food, wood, and comfort, was foreign but calming. For the first time, she felt the weight of exhaustion lift slightly, and she let herself breathe. Inside, Evan offered her water and a simple meal. Lyra tried to communicate through gestures and sounds, pointing to herself, then to the forest, trying to explain the danger that followed her. Evan nodded, understanding enough to know she had escaped from something dangerous. He moved quietly around the house, preparing simple barriers and locking doors. Milo stayed close to Lyra, growling softly at every creak or movement, ready to defend her. The first rays of dawn streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Lyra watched them, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. She had survived the night, but the day would bring new challenges. The monsters could still find her if they followed her scent. Evan sensed this too and decided that they would need a plan if they were going to survive together. For now, though, Lyra let herself relax a little. She had found safety with a human and his loyal pug. The bond she felt with Milo was immediate and comforting, a connection she hadn't known she needed. She curled up on a small rug in the living room, Milo resting his head on her lap. Evan watched them quietly. a mixture of curiosity and concern in his eyes. As the sun rose higher, painting the walls with light, Lyra whispered softly, "Thank you," though she didn't know if he could understand her fully. Milo wagged his tail, and Evan smiled, realizing that somehow this small alien girl had found a friend in both him and his dog. The world outside was dangerous, filled with monsters and unknown threats. But inside this small house, a fragile alliance had formed. Lyra, Evan, and Milo, three very different beings, shared a moment of peace, however temporary. And as the forest beyond stirred with unseen predators, Lyra knew one thing for certain. She had survived the night, and for now, that was enough. The sun had risen fully now, spilling golden light across the small house and the surrounding forest. Lyra sat on the rug. Milo curled up beside her, watching the world outside through the window. She could still sense the monsters in the distance, their dark silhouettes moving through the trees. Her small body tensed every time a shadow passed, and she hugged Milo tighter. Evan noticed her fear. He had never dealt with anything like this before. Humans had their dangers, but nothing like the relentless hunters that chased Lyra. He realized that if he wanted to help her survive, he needed to act quickly. He moved around the house quietly, gathering items that could serve as defenses, old tools, chairs, and anything that could slow down the monsters if they got close. "Lyra," he said gently, kneeling beside her, "I know they're out there, but we're going to keep you safe. Can you show me anything that can help us?" Lyra hesitated. She wanted to explain, but words were not enough. She pointed to a small device she had tucked into the folds of her cloth. It glowed faintly, pulsing with energy. She pressed it gently, and a small, translucent shield shimmered around it for a moment. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Evan nodded, understanding that this little alien device could be their advantage. He moved back to the front door, peering through the window. Shadows flickered in the trees, moving closer. The monsters were approaching, and their growls were louder now, filled with hunger and determination. "Get ready," he said quietly. "We'll need every trick we've got." Lyra stood beside him, Milo at her feet. She was scared, but she also felt a strange sense of determination. She had survived worse before, and now she wasn't alone. She glanced at Milo, who wagged his tail confidently, as if telling her that together they could face anything. The first monster appeared at the edge of the clearing. It was large, with long limbs and jagged claws that scraped the earth as it moved. Its eyes glowed with a deep red light, scanning for its prey. Milo barked sharply, running toward it, his tiny body brimming with courage. The monster hissed and lunged, but Evan was ready. He grabbed an old metal pipe and swung it with all his strength, hitting the creature's leg. The monster roared in pain, but did not stop. Lyra raised her device, pulsing a beam of energy toward the monster. It struck the beast, causing it to stagger back slightly. She repeated the pulse, careful not to exhaust herself. The monster shook off the stun quickly, its attention now fully on her. Evan realized they needed to work together. He moved behind the creature, swinging at its legs to trip it, while Milo distracted it from the front. Other monsters had begun to appear, creeping closer from the forest. They hissed and growled, their numbers small but dangerous. Evan quickly moved furniture to block the doors and windows, creating barricades that could slow the monsters if they reached the house. Lyra used her device to amplify the traps, creating small energy pulses that caused temporary shocks when touched. The monsters were relentless. One managed to break through a side window, its claws scraping against the glass. Milo ran at it fearlessly, barking and biting at its leg. Lyra fired a pulse from her device, and the creature stumbled back. Evan took the moment to strike it with a metal pipe, knocking it off balance. Together, human, alien, and dog formed a strange but effective team. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. Lyra, though exhausted, did not stop. Every pulse of her device, every move she made, was calculated. She was amazed at how brave Evan was, standing in front of her to block attacks, risking himself for someone he barely knew. Milo was a whirlwind of energy, biting, barking, and dodging the monsters, buying them crucial seconds. At one point, a monster managed to leap through the front door, its jaws snapping dangerously close to Lyra. She screamed, and Evan reacted instantly, pushing her out of the way. The monster crashed into a barricade, giving Lyra a chance to fire a pulse that sent it reeling back. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she also felt something she had never experienced before: trust. She trusted Evan to protect her. The lead monster, larger and more dangerous than the rest, charged at Lyra with terrifying speed. Milo barked fiercely, running ahead to distract it, but the beast's attention was overwhelming. Evan ran forward, grabbing the nearest heavy tool he could find and swung it with all his strength. The monster stumbled, but it wasn't enough. Lyra's pulse device emitted a stronger energy wave, wrapping the creature in a shimmering barrier that slowed its movements. Evan used this moment to push a fallen beam onto the monster, pinning it partially to the ground. Panting heavily, Lyra and Evan stood side by side, watching the other monsters retreat into the forest. The leader monster, trapped under the beam and weakened by Lyra's energy, snarled, but could do no more. The dawn sunlight shone over the clearing, highlighting the scene of battle: fallen branches, broken furniture, and the marks of claws and teeth. Milo trotted between them, sniffing, wagging his tail, and occasionally letting out a small victorious bark. Evan wiped sweat from his forehead, looking at Lyra with a mixture of awe and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. Lyra nodded, her small body trembling, but a smile appeared on her face. She reached down to hug Milo, who nuzzled her gently. The bond between them was undeniable. For the first time since escaping, she felt a real sense of safety and warmth. "We did it," Evan said quietly, more to himself than to her. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide, glowing faintly in the morning light. She wanted to tell him how much his bravery meant, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded and gave a small smile. Milo barked happily, as if celebrating their victory. The forest was quiet now. The monsters had retreated, but Lyra knew they would return eventually. She glanced at Evan, realizing that surviving wasn't just about fighting. It was about trust, friendship, and courage, the kind of human courage she had never seen before. She felt a new hope rising inside her. Evan gently guided Lyra back inside the house. "You need rest," he said. "We'll figure out the next steps later." She nodded, exhausted, and curled up on the rug with Milo beside her. The little dog rested his head on her lap, comforting her with his warmth and presence. Evan watched them for a moment, then left to clean up the mess from the battle, checking that no monsters remained close. As the day passed, Lyra explored the small house cautiously. She marveled at the simple human life around her: books, tools, furniture, and the strange machines they called appliances. She realized how different her home world was, how harsh and dangerous it had been. Here, even in the shadow of danger, there was comfort, care, and the warmth of friendship. Evan prepared food and water, placing it near Lyra and Milo. She ate slowly, still unsure of how to act around humans, but the kindness in his eyes made her feel safe. Milo stayed close, wagging his tail every time she reached for the food. It was a small, ordinary moment, but for Lyra, it felt extraordinary. She was alive, safe, and for the first time, she had allies she could trust. By evening, the light of the sun was softer, painting the walls with a warm glow. Lyra sat on the porch with Milo in her lap, watching the forest in the distance. She knew that surviving would not be easy. The monsters were still out there waiting, hunting, but she also knew that she was not alone. Evan had risked his life for her, and Milo had stayed by her side through the night. Together they had faced something terrifying and survived. Evan stepped outside, joining her on the porch. "We'll need to be careful," he said gently. "I can help you, but we have to plan. You can't stay out there alone." Lyra nodded, understanding him even without fully grasping every word. She looked down at Milo, who barked softly as if agreeing. Night began to fall again, but this time it felt different. The shadows were still there, and the forest was still dark and dangerous. But Lyra did not feel the same fear she had felt before. She had friends now, she had protection, she had hope. And for the first time in a long time, she believed she could survive whatever came next. As the stars appeared overhead, Lyra whispered softly, "Thank you." Milo barked once in response, nuzzling her hand. Evan smiled beside her, knowing that while the night would bring challenges, they had formed a bond strong enough to face them together. The monsters might come again, but Lyra, Evan, and Milo were ready. And as the first night of their new life together settled around the small house, Lyra realized that escape had not only saved her life, it had led her to a new family, one she could trust, one that would fight for her just as fiercely as she would fight for them.